This is Dateline News and Conversation. Well, the topic tonight is none other than Donald Trump. He seems to be making or sending shockwaves around the world on a daily basis, sometimes several times a day. And I've wanted to get the informed opinion of somebody in the United States who knows what's going on, not only domestically, but internationally, geopolitically. He's my friend, Dr. Wilmer Leon. He is a professor of political science. He's an author. He's the host of a very popular podcast. It's called Connecting the Dots. Dr. Wilmer Leon, welcome back to the show.
Regis, my friend, thank you very much. As always, greatly appreciate the invitation.
Well, Wilmer, I've been looking forward to asking you a number of what I think are important questions, at least for me, but I have to tell you that most Russians are not really very interested in what's going on in the United States. The media here, I have to admit, on a daily basis will post articles discussing and talking about his latest statements and his latest actions. But in terms of the regular population, the people, they're not paying much attention. So, Wilmer, I want to begin with this. I have read recently that Trump's popularity in the United States right now has dropped somewhere around 40%, his favorability rating. I want to ask you, is he losing some of his MAGA crowd? Is he losing some of those people who year after year are in the same position of voting for the lesser two evils and now have seen what he's about, have abandoned ship? And I want to know if you think he's a cult figure. Wilmer, what are your thoughts?
Well, it's interesting that you use the reference or the adage, the lesser of two evils, because one of the things that a lot of us were saying during the election is that the problem with the lesser of two evils is you still wind up with evil. But I think the analysis depends on which part of the MAGA swamp you're swimming in. The individual side of the pool, the personal side of the pool, or the corporate side. We're now, about 280 or 280 some odd days into this second term. His net approval rating is down 17 points, down half a point since last week. The numbers I show are, in terms of the public approval rating, 39% approve, 56 disapprove, 5% unsure. But one of the interesting things that recently came out in the Washington Post is the MAGA lobbying firms are booming, that there's an awful lot of money now being poured into the MAGA lobbying firms from the business side. So in spite of his promise to drain the swamp, he seems to be putting more water and muck into the swamp. And finally, I think when you look at the individual numbers, Americans have become incredibly disenchanted with his inability to stick to his campaign promises, such as bringing prices down, ending wars in a day, dealing with inflation, because inflation, the numbers came out for September, about 3%. They also don't like his approaches to immigration and crime. Not to mention um, you've got Steve Bannon talking about a possible third term. Um, Bill Ackerman, a billionaire fund hedge fund guy, has come out against him. Marjorie Taylor Greene is publicly breaking with him on Iran policy, on Gaza, calling it genocide, one of the few Republicans that will call it genocide, and healthcare. So I think the answer to your question is it really depends on which end of the MAGA swamp folks want to swim in.
I like that phrase, MAGA swamp. I'm gonna write that down and save it. Wilmer, that was a good one. Yeah,
My gift to you.
yeah, thank you. He claimed, the first time, and again this time, he was going to clean the swamp. But when you look at what's happening, it looks like you get the same people in the swamp. I don't think he has much to do with it. I think they're pretty much entrenched. Would you agree with that? That Trump is not, as Bush too used to say, I'm the decider. Uh, he makes statements and then all of a sudden he flip flops. Uh, it's got to be the swamp. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. He loves swamp creatures. He feeds them daily, and his White House has become the mega swamp breeding ground. Um, and and part of this issue has to do, and we've said this before, but he's such a transactional individual that he with no true geopolitical guiding ideology, that it's impossible to peg him to anything because the statements and the direction changes every day.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You confirmed something that I've believed for a while. He doesn't have any core values, any core beliefs.
Mm-mm.
Um, just does all he has, I think, that drives him is the deal. He's the consummate deal maker, and he uses sometimes his charm, sometimes his force, his conniving to achieve his ends. And I think when you look at geopolitically, he's failing all over. I want to transition to uh,
Just really quickly on that point. I don't even think it's the deal as much as it is his incredibly warped, uh, maniacal ego. That's what I believe is driving him is his ego.
wow. A lot of people have talked about that, how narcissistic he is, and how he's craving for praise and adulation.
Yes.
And by the way, uh, Putin and Maria Zaharova, who is the spokesperson for the Russian Foreign Ministry, have been criticized uh, for saying that uh, he loves praise and adulation, but criticized because they claim Putin and Zaharova herself have fallen into that. And from my perspective, I think that President Putin, Lavrov, and others are really playing up to Trump's ego and his narcissism and just don't want to aggravate him anymore. Um, all right, here he is. He proclaimed himself the peace president. He's basically made up stuff about all the wars he's ended, which is really baloney, and
Hmm.
especially the conflict in Ukraine, which he said he was going to end on the first day he was in office. Uh, and now we're already into uh, the end of October, and uh, doesn't look like there's going to be any end to that conflict anytime soon. But the thing I want to talk about is he just he claimed he was going to bring peace to Palestine and Gaza.
Mhm.
And he orchestrated this peace plan, which I think Jared Kushner and others, Steve Witkoff, came up with for him.
Mhm.
Uh, it doesn't seem like it's holding. What I'm reading and hearing from others is that Israel is still attacking in parts of the West Bank and Gaza. So I want to ask you, uh, is this actually happening? That there was no peace that was achieved? And second of all, I've heard that because Israel continued to attack, he's really angry at Netanyahu and has threatened him. What can you comment about that?
Well, I never saw this as a peace plan. I always saw this as a road to capitulation and surrender. And I could never understand how you can negotiate a peace deal with an entity that is sworn to annihilate you and has been engaged in genocide to accomplish that end. Because how do you compromise with someone whose stated policy is your annihilation? That I don't understand that. Um, the so-called peace plan, and this is something that I think is consistent with the Ukraine conflict, and that is President Putin was very clear when he said you can't have peace unless you deal with the fundamental causes of the conflict in the first place. He's been very clear and very consistent on that point. So I don't understand in the Zionist Palestinian conflict how you allege that you have a peace plan when you don't deal with the right of return, you don't deal with Palestinian sovereignty, you don't deal with democracy in the region, uh, you don't deal with holding those that were responsible for the atrocities, for the war crimes, for the crimes against humanity. There's nothing uh, to hold those individuals accountable. And when I say war crimes and crimes against humanity, I'm not being rhetorical. I mean, just go to the ICC, and that's why there's an arrest warrant for Netanyahu. So they haven't dealt with the fundamental elements of the conflict. How can you have peace? And
Uh,
also, it didn't deal with it doesn't deal with the West Bank. So that's why we are where we are.
yeah, the problem that I've had with it, Wilmer, is that on the one hand, he's talking peace, but he has been all in supporting the genocide. I mean, this continues to send millions or billions of dollars reportedly to Netanyahu to arm Israel and to support the genocide. It's like, are people blind? Can they not see that on the one hand, he's saying, I want to bring peace, but on the other hand, he continues to fund it? And Wilmer, your comment, is it true that he expressed anger and threats towards Netanyahu for continuing to uh, to attack the West Bank?
Well, one, how can you claim to be an independent arbiter when in January or in February he's on record as telling Netanyahu, finish the job? What? That finish annihilating, I interpret that as when you say finish the job, finish annihilating the Palestinians. Then he comes out last week standing or in the Oval Office, and he says Well, I think he was there with Netanyahu, and he says, you know, Bibi calls me and asks me for weapons, and I just send him what he wants. Sometimes I don't even really know what the weapons that he's asking for actually do, but I send them anyway. Well, I call that admitting you are complicit to the war crime, and you have just admitted that publicly. This thing about, is he angry with Netanyahu? He probably is, but that doesn't have any impact on the policy. His personal relationship. One of the mistakes I think that a lot of people in the West make when they see what's going on there, they're trying to personalize this as though it's actually Donald Trump in control of the policy. This is American foreign policy. This is the policy that has been in place irregardless of who's sitting in the Oval Office. This is the same thing that Joe Biden was doing before him. This is the same thing. The United States could have put an end to this 40 years ago. There's a reason that it hasn't. It doesn't matter whether Donald Trump is angry with, and the basis of of Trump's anger with Netanyahu really has, I think, a lot more to do with the perceptions and the optics of domestic politics as Donald Trump sees Americans' sentiments towards this genocide have turned dramatically, as Democrats also saw, as Kamala Harris, when she was running, she supported and the Democrats supported it. Now they see that was a huge mistake to make. So he's trying to ride the wave of American domestic sentiment at the same time trying not to anger Benjamin Netanyahu. So this personal, and then of course Netanyahu has his own personal politics, domestic politics, and he's trying to stay out of jail. So they're both trying to play both sides against the middle.
Yeah. And one thing about Trump, and it goes back to that ego, that narcissistic personality, he doesn't want to look bad ever. And Wilmer, the thing that I find really hilarious, uh, I was just talk in terms of uh, Prime Minister Modi in India. He's trying to get Modi to get on his knees and stop using Russian gas and oil. And then he talks about Modi as a really good friend. They have a great relationship. It's the same thing with Putin. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Putin and I really get along. We really know each other. He's been a really good friend. And then he condemns him. And then it's the same thing with President Xi in China. We have a really good relationship. We're really good friends. Geez, everybody is his really good friend. Oh, I think it's hilarious, actually. Anyway, I want to continue on with Trump and uh, his son-in-law, Jared Kushner. Uh, I think this character is a really sleazy guy. He seems to
Mm-hmm.
be a hedge fund manager or some kind of investment guru, but he came up with a plan to create a Mediterranean resort, the Gaza Riviera, with his father-in-law, Donald, and Witkoff, Trump's business partner and special uh, envoy to Russia in the Middle East. Um, Wilma, what do you think of this? The Gaza Riviera. Tell me this isn't the sickest thing and the most obvious thing what Trump and his close circle, his family, are really all about.
Well, again, in terms of these swamp monsters, you can't leave out um, his father. You can't leave out um, his son-in-law's father, because he's part of this. The convicted felon who's now, I think, the ambassador to France, um, and all because they're all real estate developers. And so they just see this as a real estate development, and they've got to get the poor people that are currently occupying the apartment out of the building so they can tear the building down and build a new high-rise apartment complex for the elite. I'm using that, of course, metaphorically. Um, so, in fact, a couple of days ago, Trump was at the White House and he stops in the middle of a sentence and he says, "Oh, you hear that? You hear that? That's music to my ears." Talking about the deconstruction, the tearing down of the East Wing of the White House. All he thinks about is real estate, and so I don't understand. Even if they were successful at this point in removing the Palestinians from their land, and how do you deal with the contamination of the soil? All of these weapons, all of this dust, all of the contaminants that are left over from war. Who in their right? I would call it a cancer resort. If you want cancer, that's probably where you would want to go and spend a week and breathe the dust. And so I don't, and then the other thing is, who's going to work there? Who are you going to get to work there? And if you think you're going to get Palestinians to work there, then how could you trust that the person bringing you your drink, the waiter bringing you your dinner, hasn't defiled your food in the process? I mean, this makes no sense. But when you're a real estate developer, all you see are skylines, high rises, and shiny buildings. Um, it's not going to work. It's not going to happen, and it wouldn't be safe if it did.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You mentioned a couple of important things. Uh, the really terrible and lasting effects of war uh, with unexploded ordnance, with all the contaminated dust, with depleted uranium, with uh, whatever they napalm or whatever they're using to kill these
Right.
Palestinians is that stuff just isn't going to go away, and you cannot easily clean that stuff up. And you mentioned something that I did see, and I had to laugh. It's destroying the east wing of the White House to build a palatial ballroom. I have to wonder, what are other people thinking? I mean, I saw that, and on the one hand, I laughed, but on the other hand, I went, who the hell gave him permission to do that? You know,
Nobody.
to destroy. Oh my.
I've written in a few places jokingly that if you understand the history of the White House and understand that enslaved Africans were critical in the construction of the building, he's directed his architects to only tear down the pieces that the black people built because he wants to be sure that there's no DEI involved in the construction of the White House. So he's just brick by brick. No, don't touch that brick. That was a white brick mason that built that one. Take that brick out because a black one did that one. You know what, though? In all seriousness, there are some that say he's actually building a bunker under that
Oh,
edifice. Um, I don't know, that's just it would make perfect sense if in fact he's doing that. I'm not saying he is, but it wouldn't surprise me if this whole thing is really just a ruse because he's building a bunker underneath there. Maybe he'll live there after his term ends. I don't know.
well, he's even talking about, and you mentioned it earlier, running for a third
Third,
term. Uh, Geez, I don't know if he's going to live that long, Wilmer. I mean, he's not really in very good physical and health conditions. Uh, It's a steady diet of double quarter pounders and cheese, extra large fries, and a 16-ounce Coke. Uh, that doesn't make for a long life, I don't think.
No, it doesn't.
Anyway, so Wilmer, he's not acting like a president.
No,
Uh, he's acting like a king
correct,
and a despot, a
correct,
tyrant.
correct.
He does not go to Congress for approval for anything. He just does whatever he wants. And then when the courts at whatever level disagree with him, he appeals, and he controls most of them. They're going along with him, even the Supreme Court. So he really is acting like a king, which brings me to the king protests.
Hmm.
Millions of people around the country in every state and all kinds of cities and towns and villages rose up to protest no king.
Hmm.
Now, I wonder, in your opinion, because it's hard for me to tell, some 6,000, 7,000 miles away,
Hmm.
uh, who or what was really behind these protests. And I have some serious questions about the protests, but I'd like your take on it.
Well, from what I've been able to discern, you're looking at organizations that are directly or loosely, depending on which one you look at, affiliated with the left and with the Democrat Party. So you're looking at the League of Conservative of the League of Conservation Voters, the Third Act Movement, the ACLU, and I don't say this in any way, shape, or form to condemn these organizations. I'm just trying to answer the question as honestly as I know that you asked who's behind it. From what I've been able to discern, those are some of the entities that are behind it. I think. Well, okay, so that's the answer to your question. I'll wait for the next question.
Well, I want to continue on that theme because that's really what was behind my question. A couple of my friends uh, immediately commented and they posted on their social media websites that this really was a campaign rally preparing for the midterm elections. So, kind of confirming what you said about all of these left type organizations, the Democratic Party, are trying to bring people out and focusing what appears to be the right now main theme of their midterm election cycle, criticizing Trump from being an out of control despot, a king. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, it's echoes of the Harris campaign of 2024. There's very little substantive agenda. There's very little discussion about how their legislation, how their policies are going to improve the everyday lives of Americans. It centers more around Donald Trump is an idiot and Donald Trump is dangerous. Donald Trump is a despot and he needs to be removed. But when I watched, I called it the Grand Puppet Show because you had all these people in costumes, shark costumes, and all these puppets and all of this stuff, which was great theater. But what are the marching orders? When the people ended the march or the rally and they got back home to their living rooms and their kitchen tables, what's the next move? What were they directed to do? And I don't know the other than not vote for Donald Trump. I don't know the answer to that question. It's the fact that it's tied to the left organizations that I mentioned is consistent with the vacuous, there's no message here from the Democrats. The two things seem to be in simpatico.
I love the way you express that, Wilmer. Um, I I quite cynically think that they're just playing on the stupidity of a lot of American voters who are now upset with Trump, were disappointed with maybe that they voted for him the last time. Do you think that they have a chance? I do. I think they have a chance of taking over the Senate and the House. And I think that their goal is going to be to impeach him again. Your thoughts?
I think, yes, they do stand a great chance of taking both houses, but they won't, I believe, be as successful as they could be if they actually articulated a message. So they may gain 3 seats in the House, 3 or 4 seats or so in the Senate. They'll have a narrow margin, which means they're still going to have to struggle and fight with the Republicans, as the Republicans are now having to struggle and fight with the Democrats. But that margin of victory won't be nearly what it could have been if they actually articulated how they're going to improve the quality of life for Americans. I have seen through research and in reading that the adage is people have a tendency to vote for things, not against things. So, one of the big mistakes I think that the Democrats are making is when they look at these 7 million or some odd people that turned out at this rally or these 240 marches across the country, that those people are going to vote for Democrats. Just because you're against Donald Trump doesn't mean you're going to vote for a Democrat. There are other options, such as staying home. So I think they're making a huge mistake in assuming that the folks that turned out last week will turn out for them at the polls. Those two things, there is a difference between correlation and causation. And I don't think that it's a fair assumption to make without giving these people a reason to turn out and vote for you.
Yeah. One of the things that I questioned when I looked at this No Kings protest, uh, there didn't seem to be any condemnation of Trump and his foreign policy in supporting genocide in Gaza and Palestine. No mention of that from what I could tell. And the other thing that bothered me, it because and the reason it bothered me is because Americans seem to be so ignorant, uninformed, or they just don't give a damn. No condemnation of Trump's involvement and ownership now of this conflict in Ukraine. Wilmer.
Well, they can't square that circle because Kamala Harris and the Democrats backed the Gaza genocide. I was at the Democrat convention in Chicago in August, while the Palestinian protesters that were credentialed, so they were able to make it up to the door of the convention center, they weren't allowed on the stage because Kamala Harris and the Democrats, Hakeem Jeffries, Gregory Meeks, pick one, they back genocide. Why? Because they're taking their money from AIPAC. So it's hard at this No Kings March to now talk about the horrors of the genocide when less than a year ago you were backing it. Joe Biden sat next to Benjamin Netanyahu and said, I am a Zionist.
Yeah.
And Netanyahu turned to Biden and said, yes, you are. You're an Irish Zionist. It's hard, in my opinion, to challenge the war in Ukraine when Joe Biden started it. So it the Democrats, thank you, Bill Clinton, for the Democratic Legislative Council and the brilliant idea to move the Democrats further to the right, and Al Gore and the rest of them. It's hard now to square that circle. At one of the things that Dr. West has been very clear on is consistency. He's been saying for a very long time the Democrats are inconsistent, and their inconsistency is now catching up with them because they can't take positions that would now be counter to the positions they've been taking for the last 10 years.
All right, Wilmer, something now closer to home. I think you're living in the Washington, D.C. area.
I am.
Something that has really bothered me, and I know a lot of other people who are protesting, I guess, in the United States, was Trump sending in the military, the National Guard, to Washington, D.C. to clean out all the crime and the drugs so that now people could go back to the restaurants and have a good time. He sent them to Portland, Oregon,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been to Portland several times. It's a wonderful city. It's been a well, I think a local area that has been big time on protest,
Mm-hmm.
anti-imperialism, anti-war. There's a lot of veterans that were living there, but he sent the National Guard or the military in there. The same thing to Los Angeles. You're going to clean up Los Angeles, the drugs, the homelessness, the crime, and then to Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
In each of those locations, the states, the governors have resisted and opposed and are now suing Trump. Wilmer, I just can't understand how the American people are just rolling over, lying down, and letting that happen and not protesting. They are in the cities where it's happening,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not across, from what I can tell, they're not protesting across the country. What's your take on that?
Well, first of all, you're right. It's a direct attack on American cities that are governed by Democrat governors, and Donald Trump has been very, very clear on this. I'm canceling this program or I'm canceling that program because they're Democrat programs, and the Democrats hate it when I do this. Not understanding that a whole lot of people get food stamps, a whole that are not Democrat. There are a whole lot of farmers, soy farmers that aren't happy. There are a lot of beef farmers that aren't happy as Donald Trump is talking about buying Argentine beef. So uh, just because the city is run by a Democrat doesn't mean that everybody in the city is a Democrat. But he's violating the Posse Comitatus Act. He's turning, he's using the American military to turn their weapons on American citizens in American cities. I think some of this has to do with people, in some instances, don't know which way to turn. Steve Bannon was very clear in 2017 by saying, we're flooding the zone. We're gonna do so much every day that people won't know what to do. People won't know which way to turn. So I think that strategy is working. The media isn't reporting this out in the nonpartisan manner that journalists are supposed to employ. So people are tuning out instead of turning on. Where was this discussion last Saturday at the No Kings rally? Those should have been, or that should have been, one of the marching orders that those folks should. You need to be as legally disruptive to ICE in your community as possible. You cannot stand idly by and allow these unconstitutional actions to be taken by these forces. The Constitution starts with "we the people" in order to form a more perfect union. Where are the people? And I don't hear enough. I don't. I don't hear Hakeem Jeffries speaking to this. I don't hear Gregory Meeks speaking to this. I don't hear Kamala Harris speaking to this. I don't hear anybody in positions of leadership directing the country how to oppose this wannabe dictator.
Yeah, this is really frightening to me looking at it from afar. I can't believe I don't recognize the country of my birth. It just, that is not what I thought I grew up in, what I thought that I was a patriotic American. Uh, oh my goodness, I don't recognize the place anymore. Um, I love the way you expressed that, Wilmer. I think it was really right on the money.
You
Um,
know, in fact, just really quickly, you're hearing more pushback from Marjorie Taylor Greene than you're hearing from Richie Torres. You're hearing more pushback from Marjorie Taylor Greene than you're hearing from AOC. Who would have thought that I'd be actually reading and thinking, wow, Marjorie Taylor Greene is right on this issue of healthcare. She's right on this issue of of immigration. Who would have thunk it that Marjorie Taylor Greene would be on the right side of saying, I don't answer to AIPAC. I don't have, it is genocide. I don't have to say it's not because I don't answer to AIPAC. Who would have
yeah,
thunk it?
amazing. And she's Republican, isn't she?
About as Republican as you can get.
As you can
She was
get.
she was one of the staunchest supporters and still is a claims to be a staunch Donald Trump or MAGA supporter, but she at least is identifying some of the core issues that no matter what your political leaning, you can't support genocide. I don't care what else you do or say. You can't support genocide.
Yeah. Well, uh, very emphatically stated, Wilmer. Appreciate that.
Sure.
Uh, Another domestic issue, you've got to be very familiar with it. You're living in the Washington, D.C. area. It seems like it's dropped out of the attention of the international media anyway, but is not the government still shut down? I just
Yeah.
read where the government employees are not receiving their second paycheck. And a few weeks ago, when it first started, Trump said he wanted to use it to get rid of and eliminate thousands of brain dead bureaucrats that do nothing. Wilmer, I know I've worked in government, state government on two occasions, once in Arizona, once in Maine. I
Hmm.
worked with governments in California and Oklahoma. You know what governments are on the local level and the federal level are a jobs program, if nothing else. What Help me understand what the hell is going on? Isn't this the longest shutdown of the United States government, at least
No,
in recent memory?
no. Uh, I think the first shutdown during the Trump administration went 30 some odd days. And
Wow.
we're now in day 24, I think. So if this goes through next week, then we'll be very close to the longest shutdown in history. Um, a couple of things on this. One, the Trump administration made a serious miscalculation. They expected that the minority party, led by Schumer in the Senate and Jeffries in the House, would have folded by now, because historically that's what they've done.
Yeah.
So they made a calculation that was, and I was even saying when this thing started, I'll be very surprised if Schumer and Jeffries hold their ground, because traditionally, historically, they fold. Well, what they're finding right now is the polling shows that the people are still behind them. So as long as the numbers show that the people are backing Schumer and Jeffries will hold their position. And also, they're taking the right position. I can't debate that with them, because you can't trust. The Republicans are saying reopen the government, pass this clean funding bill, and then we'll come and talk about the health care, the Affordable Care Act issue. And Schumer and Jeffries are saying we can't trust you to do that. Why? Because you lie. So they're taking a principled position, and God bless them for doing so. Um, Trump now has made a serious miscalculation, but again, his ego won't allow him to adjust position, to change course, to say to Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, okay, let's uh, let's find a way out. Let's find an off ramp here. And yes, this is the second missed paycheck, but it's the first missed full paycheck. So I don't know which way this is going to go, but now that people have missed a full paycheck, as we go into this coming week, I think don't be surprised if you start to see more and hear more about disgruntled Americans, also because we're now getting close to the holiday season, and this holiday is not going to be pleasant, if these people don't have jobs, and if those that are furloughed don't have paychecks.
Well, and beyond the paychecks, Wilmer, uh, many of these government agencies provide critical services to millions of Americans, which has stopped completely. Am I right?
Oh, you're absolutely right. And so you've got the government trying to figure out how they're going to pay the military. And one of Trump's buddies, whose name escapes me, he gave Trump $130 million. I don't know how far that would go in paying the military, but
That wouldn't go very far.
to pay the military. And see, this is when you asked earlier about the MAGA issue, and I talked about depending on which end of the swamp you're swimming in. This is where the individual MAGA people are becoming affected by the swamp monsters, because they are now coming out and saying, we didn't vote for this. We didn't. What are you doing, Donald? We didn't vote for this, which really, in my mind, it really means, yeah, we voted for this, but you weren't supposed to screw us. You told us it was the Mexicans. You told us you were going to get these Latinos out of the country. You didn't say you were going to cancel my wife's job. You didn't tell me that you were going to force my son to go back and now repay his student loans. You didn't tell me my daughter, who just graduated from college, won't be able to find a job. Donald, you're screwing me, and you weren't supposed to do that. I'm white like you. What are you doing, Donald? I'm from Iowa. I'm a potato farmer in Iowa or Idaho. I'm a soybean farmer. I'm a cattle rancher. I voted for you. And now you want to send $40 billion of my tax money to Argentina so that Malay can get reelected? No, Donald, that's not what this deal was supposed to be. But he doesn't care.
You're killing me, Wilmer. I'm sitting here and I'm just laughing at the way you've expressed this.
Well,
It's
because you don't
so
want to cry.
No, I don't want to cry. You're right. You're right. All right. I want to finish on
Okay.
on a topic that's obviously very important to me. I'm living in the Russian Federation. I'm living in the Crimea, Uh, Trump, uh, after that phone call with
Mm.
Vladimir Putin on the 16th, the day before that ugly event, that very cold, unwelcome of Volodymyr Zelensky in the White House on Friday in the afternoon, uh, Trump uh, was talking about meeting Putin in a summit in Budapest, Hungary. He very quickly reversed direction and said he thought it was going to be a waste of his time. Now, I want to point out one thing, and then I want you to comment on what actually happened and where this is going. Was it a green light for Putin? Uh, the Russian side has said the idea of a summit in Budapest was Trump's idea,
Hmm.
not Putin's idea.
Hmm.
Now, to me, this is another one of those occasions that makes Trump look like a fool. Uh, on again, off again. Wilmer, what are your ideas about what this means in terms of a peace plan going forward in Ukraine and the relationship between Donald Trump and President Putin?
I think you have to go back to before you get to the phone call, that 2 hour phone call between Putin and Trump. I think you have to go back to a comment that was made by, and help me with the pronunciation. Is it Medved? I always say Medvedev.
Medvedev.
Medvedev. Okay, thank you.
Medvedev. Doesn't matter.
Medvedev,
There you
the for,
go.
the former president,
Yeah.
who I want to say about a week before that phone call, when Donald Trump was talking about sending tomahawks into Ukraine, which by the way won't really work, won't really matter. Um, he said, if you do that, I'll paraphrase, you have crossed a line which will be very dangerous for the United States. And then he said, and very dangerous for you personally. Then all of a sudden, Donald Trump starts digging in the yard in the East Wing, and I think that's why many people say, "Oh, he's digging a bunker," because Medvedev has come out and threatened him personally, which you know better than I. Um, uh, diplo- from a diplomatic perspective, you never do that. But so when Putin gets on the phone the Thursday before Netanyahu arrives, I think Putin told him, Donald, I'm getting sick of you, and you better listen to my guy because we're not joking around with you. And folks need to realize Russia doesn't threaten, Russia doesn't joke, Russia doesn't play. And so I think initially President Putin was trying to be gracious and give Trump an opportunity for an off ramp in Budapest. But again, Donald Trump does not control the policy. And so the Lindsey Grahams of the world and many of the other ultra conservative hawks in the American ruling elite said, Donald, under no way you go there, you might not come back. So um, Putin has been very consistent, and he's moved beyond peace to surrender. The only way this is going to end is you will surrender. That's why Trump said before that call, uh, uh, look, Zelensky, you're going to have to give up some territory. Or you're going to be annihilated. He was speaking truth at that moment. He was telling the truth. You're in for a butt whipping. And if you think you've had your hind parts kicked so far, wait and, go ahead and really piss this guy off and see what happens. So I think once again, Donald Trump has found himself between a rock and a hard place. And he's now wanting to shift gears, which is why he's trying to focus attention on the Caribbean and Venezuela.
Yeah, you mentioned Medvedev and his statements. Uh, I've been telling people for a long time that Medvedev is not a loose cannon.
No,
He does not he's just not out there some rogue operative in the Kremlin. He's playing and singing off the same song sheet. Uh,
absolutely.
he's just very blunt, and Putin and Lavrov always maintain the high ground,
Yeah.
the high road, and are always diplomatic. Uh, and it's like I use the metaphor stereophonic sound.
Hmm.
You've got to listen to both channels because both channels are telling you what Russian thinking and policy is all about. In fact, Putin replied very directly the exact same thing to Donald Trump. It'll be a big mistake if you send those tomahawks because we know and we can't tell if one of them you send is equipped with a nuclear warhead or just a conventional warhead. And so we're going to have to react, and our reaction will be overwhelming. I think that's exactly what he said. And so when you listen,
Disproportionate and asymmetrical is the language he used with Joe Biden.
so you have to listen to both channels. Now, I want to finish on this note.
One quick
Uh,
point there. To your point about the diplomacy and listening to both channels, while have you seen President Xi Jinping making videos uh, on the and putting videos on the internet of him flying a plane, dropping feces on people? Have you seen Wang Yi do that? Have you seen Lavrov do that? Have you seen Modi do that? No, because these are serious, serious men. They are the adults in the room. They wear the big boy pants and they don't have time for this foolishness. While Donald Trump is making videos, these boys are out here handling business.
you're killing me. Yeah, Trump is a reality show.
A
These
bad one.
a bad one, and these others are really leaders of their country. They're really concerned about the very serious consequences of what's going on and what Donald Trump is doing. But I want to get back and finish on this note, and I
Mhm.
want your opinion. Uh, the Budapest summit, Trump said he's not going. First, he's the guy that suggested it. Then he said he's not going. And then, as you rightly and correctly said, he basically saying to Zelensky, you either give up territory, you go to the peace table, you're going to get your butt kicked. Was this a green light to Russia to continue all out in their special military operation to achieve all of their goals? The complete demilitarization of Ukraine, the denazification of Ukraine, the complete neutrality of Ukraine, never, ever NATO. And finally, we got to get down to the root causes of this, which has been the encroachment of NATO all around Russia since the fall of the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact in 1991. Your final thoughts.
I'm glad you defined those objectives because, contrary to what the head of NATO is saying, contrary to what Macron and all the other leaders of the EU are saying, this never was to get the band back together. This never was to reunite the former Soviet Union. This never was a mission to take over Europe. So I'm glad you were very clear in stating those objectives because President Putin has been very clear in stating those objectives. The answer to your question about the green light, I would say yes, but I would frame it differently. Because when you say green light, some could misconstrue that as Trump saying or sending a message to Putin, go ahead and finish. And I don't think that's what's going on here. I think the West's and NATO and Europe's miscalculations here are going to result in Putin finishing the job, because they're too stupid to stop him. And when I say they're too stupid to stop him, what I mean is you just need to sit down, be honest with the man, realize y'all made a serious mistake, and put an end. They can put an end to this anytime they want to. And they are refusing to do so. And so Putin is saying, well, you started this fight. I'm going to finish it. So the answer to your question is that's a very long way of me saying, yes, I would just modulate that green light reference, but I get your point and you're right.
Well, Wilmer, I want to thank you. It's another really energized,
Entertaining.
entertaining conversation, which characterizes all of our discussions. I can't thank you enough, Wilmer.
Regis, it's a pleasure as always. Look forward to the next time.